What's up, everyone? We have this little Honda here. It's 5 horsepower. It's an older machine, but it's a pretty decent little machine, and the owner said it's hard to start. So immediately I instantly start to think maybe it has a low oil shutoff, and it does. So potentially this could be as easy as just adding some oil. Let's take a look at the oil. Now for these, you do have to take it out, clean it, and then check the oil level. I'm not going to clean it just because I don't have another hand available right now, but we'll see what we can do. And it's a little low. So let's see if we can reproduce it. It might be an oil level. It could very well just be a carburetor problem. Don't know yet. But let's go ahead and see if we can reproduce it and see what it looks like. Hard to start problems with stuff like this. I love it when it's just like the oil, but more likely than not, it's not. That oil looks pretty clean too, so there's that as well. I think that is choke. Yeah, sorry about that. Someone came over. Anyway, so choke should be on. Let's give it a pull. Switch is on too. That's a problem. We'll take that off. But if you notice, I only started on choke, and it seemed like it was running pretty decent on choke. Let's see if it does that with the choke off. Maybe. Okay, well, we're going to let it cool a little bit, and then in the meantime, let's go ahead and look at that recoil. Took the recoil off with just a couple screws, so not that difficult, but anyway, let's take a look. This is pretty nasty. It's all put a little oil there. Usually there's a place somewhere we can squeeze a little bit in here too. On the other side. If it wasn't squishy, or if it was just jammed, then usually the removing of it will free it up. This is not really wanting to be freed up, now is it? Take that off. Oh, now it's doing something. Let's try to rewind a little bit. You do want to be careful. There's a very temperamental spring that's in there. And that temperamental spring can pop out at any moment if you try to remove it. Oh, it's already done. Perfect. Need a little oil. So let's go ahead and put everything back on the way it came off. Yeah, it probably would be helpful just to do that a little bit more, but I think we're pretty good. I'm going to put it back on, and then we'll try to start the machine again. And while I'm putting it back on, I do want to say stay tuned to the end. I'm pretty sure fuel is going to be our main issue, assuming that's even an issue. And in the meantime, at the end, I'm going to tell you what another common problem would be if you do the repair and it's not fixing your problem. I could be jumping the gun here, but I'll let you try to guess what it is before I say anything. But from what I can tell so far, I don't think we're going to go down that special route, but you should definitely pay attention, because these machines do have a tendency of having the issue I'm going to discuss with you later. On no choke, see if it starts. It's only been like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So there isn't a whole lot there, but what I think some of the problem is, though, I think when it has water on it, I don't have a wand. He didn't give me the wand, and the fitting he has for his quick connect is different than mine. I don't have one that's going to fit that, so it's a little hard for me to tell. But what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at the bowl, and we'll see what type of GUIs come out of there, if anything. If it didn't run, I'd be more inclined to say we should just take the bowl off, or excuse me, the carb off, but it ran, so I don't suspect we're going to have a whole lot of problems here. Probably would help if I actually loosen it. Underneath the carb is a container. Now, when I do this, I'm going to press up on the carb bowl to try to limit some of the leaking. Otherwise, it's going to fall down and it's all going to want to come out at the same time. In addition to that, let me turn the fuel off. That kind of twinkle. There we go. Let's continue to take it off. I already see a couple problems in the bowl, but I'll show you that in a moment. So, let's take a look at this bowl. What is some gooey parts in there. So, probably good we did that. More importantly, I don't know if you can tell, probably in a little bit you can. You see that darker area? That's water. These machines don't like water in their fuel, especially since I didn't necessarily turn it off immediately. There's a lot more fuel in there than there probably should be. So, that tells me probably had a little bit too much water in there, and maybe certain occasions it just became difficult to start. So it's good that we're doing this. I'm going to empty that fuel out though. I'm going to turn the fuel on and see if it leaks any more water in the cup, and if it doesn't, we're still going to check the tank. I don't know if you can tell, but there's some nasties in there, but the fuel filter is intact and actually looks pretty clean. So that's not going to be our source of our problem, I believe. I think some of the nasties would probably just potentially some of the gasket that came off when I was taking a bowl off. Don't really know. But anyway, and get the bowl cleaned up, and then we'll take a urine sample. Let's turn the fuel on and see what happens. Fuel looks very clean. Obviously not how it was meant to come out of the carb. But it's coming. I think that should be good enough. Now, trick. So if you tip whatever container you're using on its side, and if it doesn't kind of gather towards the bottom, water is heavier than fuel, it's always going to sink. I don't see anything. So I don't think the tank has any water in it. So that's good. I didn't see it either, but maybe there was some in the fuel line. Who knows? Doesn't appear to be a problem. However, what I think we will do is we're going to look at a jet. I have a little flathead here. Really didn't really take the carb off. Not super easy, but it's not usually too bad. I'm going to find a better screwdriver. There we go. The only hard part about this is the jet is a little bit smaller. It kind of likes to get hung up on its way out. Okay. I'm going to take a look at that, see what we have. It hit me why we are doing this. I didn't explain why. So, what I'm thinking is some of the problem is if you have water in there, the motor's under a load. And the load is going to be, it's probably okay if it's running. Probably going to be a little hard because the fuel is a little bit too low. But if you have any blockages, especially when starting, it's just going to be too much for a cold engine and you're not going to have a fun time. This had a very small amount of blockage, but it was a blockage. I took a micro drill bit set, the number where it should have been at, it didn't even go in, so I kind of scraped off some of the sediment that was around it, and now it's perfect. Now, important, I did not widen it, but I did scrape it out. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. You can rejet a carburetor, don't get me wrong. However, unless you need to, it's really not needed. If you are consistently running into problems of lean conditions, then yeah, you might want to. Maybe the area you live is just difficult for that particular carb. Jet. Elevation, temperature, all those things can affect how it runs. So yeah, you might need to fine-tune your own personal machine. But I've noticed the older machines, before a lot of regulations were in place, they are basically properly jetted. There's not really any issues in those. The ones that really become an issue are but within the last 5 years. If you have anything within the last 5 years or so, maybe even 6, you're probably going to run into this problem. So keep that in mind. Now that we have the bowl on, or we're putting the bowl on, this little bolt or screw or whatever does need to be facing out. That's your drain. I don't know why you need a drain right there, since that's not going to be draining all the fuel anyway. You see how easy it is to take the bowl off, or not even that, just take and loosen that bowl nut, whatever. Anyway, let's go ahead and turn the fuel on and see if we have any leaks. From the looks of the outside, we should be nice and clean. Just gonna maybe wipe up some of the fluid so I can kind of tell or see if there's any fuel coming off of it. So far, so good. What I'm looking for is making sure this is dry, or there's not fuel running down the bowl. So far, none of that's happening. And the fuel has been on plenty of time. So, I think what I'm going to do, I have to run an errand. It's going to be about an hour, hour and a half. I'm going to leave this on the table, let it cool. It's 40 degrees outside, so it's not going to be a problem. And then I come back, we'll see if it's still easy to start, if it's easier to start. And we're back. It's been a while, but let's go ahead and take a look and see if it is okay. And if it still doesn't start on the first pull, we're probably just going to put a little oil in there. But even the second pull at this temperature, it's probably okay. Works just fine. I let that bowl sit there for a while and see if there's any water. There isn't. I think we got it. Because it is a little low anyway though, I'm going to put a little oil in there. The reason being is if you, let's say for instance, are pressure washing a driveway, probably fairly common. If it's at an angle, maybe the angle is causing the oil to kind of shift and it's not touching the sensor and the sensor's not seeing oil and it could be hard to start. Solution to that would be to flip it around and then it should be fine. However, if that's only works on a slight angle, if it's a steep angle, then you're going to have to do that. To be honest, you probably shouldn't be doing it in a very steep angle to begin with. It's just going to be a giant pain. But at a slight angle, you really shouldn't run into that unless you're running low like we are today. So other than that, I'm going to go ahead and fill the oil a little bit, maybe an ounce or two. Wasn't all that low, but better be safe than sorry. Now, what would I have done if that did not work? Next thing, I'll give you a bonus one too. We're going to check the valves. These, if the valves get tight, won't actually make a very good seal, if at all. And it's not going to be able to create the necessary suction or compression that's needed to get started easier. So, if your valves are out of adjustment, you need to adjust them. I would check that if what we did here today didn't work. Check the valves, and if all is good, you should be good to go. Another possible reason could be as easy as the plug, could be going bad, could be carboned up, could just be a crappy plug. Don't know. Especially if it's like the Savior brand or some cheap brand you found on Amazon. Get rid of that. Next, very well could be the low oil sensor starting to fail. If that's the case, now you shouldn't always run it like this. It's a good way to test it. Is you can disconnect. There's a little wire that goes from that into the wiring for the switch and the coil. If you disconnect that, it has nothing that's going to cause it to die, and you shouldn't have any potential problems with that sensor. It's out of the loop. You should be good to go. Having said that, I think we're set. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If you like what you see, put a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. Definitely subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video. Have a good night.